Hey guys, so today I'm gonna try to kind of start off where I left off in the previous video. I'm gonna take y'all in the shop with me. The processor's still in the shop. I'm kind of done with repair work right now. I think I'm gonna go ahead and service it up, just do some, just grease everything, which of course I do that while it's in position out at the out where out in the wood yard where we're processing. But I'm gonna go ahead and do it while it's in the shop, just a little bit easier and more comfortable to be in there doing it. So just check everything else that needs servicing, air filter, oil, fuel filter, things like that. But probably not going to get any footage of that, but I did want to go ahead and just take you guys with me and show y'all just some things that we've done to the processor, to whether it be to improve it or just fix little flaws. I mean, like we said, it's the very first one ever made that Eastonmade ever put on out in production, so definitely had a few things that needed to be tweaked, and I'll show y'all what I'm talking about. One thing, I'm gonna actually take you guys over here with me and show you some of the original splitter beams that they were putting on these when they were first being produced. This is interesting and definitely something that they've improved on for sure. The Eastonmades, I think that now the processes that they're putting out are definitely tried and true. Not a essentially ours is sort of like a prototype. And I mean, not that he didn't, a lot of the stuff was off the Bell's processors, and that were tried and true and great, but the offset splitter design was something that he was kind of developing. And this is actually some of the very first beams, and Eastonmade was awesome for doing this, sending us, our unit was the first one, and they quickly realized that the splitter trough was just too narrow. This is the actual very first one that we actually put some hours on here, and as you can see, it was very, very narrow, not a lot of relief. If this were coming out at an angle, that would help. Didn't leave enough room. I mean, as you can imagine, if you split a larger diameter log and then you get those rounds, that it's going to put a big piece on the bottom of your wedge, and then you can't, you have no wedge adjustment. Then you can't lower your wedge, and then you would split even a small log would do the same thing. So that was definitely one of the flaws that needed addressing, and they did that. They quickly sent us a new beam. I mean, I'm not sure how many hours we put on this one, but we just have these over here for kind of spare parts. Potentially maybe make a splitter out of them one day. To have a nice push plate like that. We have a spare over there, and like I said, Eastonmade's been great and been able to swap this stuff out for us, pretty quick when we were first getting our processor going. And this was another one that they sent. We never even put this one on the machine because they made another update, and it's the current one that we have on our machine now. It's still not the same beam that they're putting on the new processors. The newer processors have what's called a manufactured beam that's built out of AR400 steel. So that means that this plate here is built out of hardened steel instead of, this is just an actual I-beam. And the tolerance in these I-beams is, they're not perfect, and they're not built exactly the same one to the next. So that's, you get a little bit of play in your push plate, and then also they wear a good bit quicker, being that it's not a hardened steel. So they definitely made a lot of improvements, and you'll see what we've done to try to mimic some of the improvements that they've made. We kind of always did want to do that. Even from the beginning, we were going to cut the original beam that we got. I mean, right away, we were just going to cut it all out of there and basically do what we've done to this current beam now. Just the more freedom you can have after the wedge, the better control you have of the size of the split that you'll be putting out. Because if you don't have anything underneath that wedge, there's nothing preventing you from lowering or raising that wedge. And the same thing with on the sides. If you have, you know, if you're cutting 16-inch long firewood or 18-inch long firewood or 20-inch long firewood, if you have at least that distance from the side of your vertical wedge, you know, if it's a 16-way wedge, you need to have that distance from the side of your furthest vertical wedge over. I'll explain that when I get in the shop and I can kind of show you guys what I'm talking about. But if you can have that distance between your wedge, your vertical wedge, and the side, you know, the vertical side, you will bind and create, you know what I mean, and even that binding, if it's bound hard enough, can make it where you can't raise or lower your wedge. So and it also just puts an unnecessary stress on the machines. Kind of everything's just kind of a mess, same way I left it yesterday from working on it. But as you can see, this looks a lot different than what we, you know, if you can envision what it looked like out there and in our kind of scrap yard out there. You know, this beam here looked very, very similar to that second one that I showed you. It had a flat bottom on it out to about here where my hand is. Not flat, but it was a pitched bottom. And then it had these sidewalls. You can see where that, you can see right there where we cut that off, right in that area, and cut it off right there on the bottom. And the only reason we even left that on there was to mount this log stop back onto it. Originally the log stop was mounted right up here on the top. You can see where it came, you know, that made a curve and it came back to, you know, into this area where my hand is, and then the log stop was mounted on top of that, you know, and it was removable and everything, and adjustable. We had to, you know, just go with what we could do, and we mounted it hard on there, just welded. So it's not adjustable length. The way that we can adjust it is put a different size faceplate on the front of it. You can, and I mean, I've thought about doing that, is just making something that would kind of have some sort of a set screw that would go around the round plate that's on top. And I'll go ahead and get in the cab and maybe we can get a better angle and show you guys what I'm talking about. Yeah, so this plate right here, we could essentially make something that's a little bit thicker to go here to shorten my distance. And you know, you can also play with it right here. There's a little bit of room on the threads of the cylinder itself. And I actually thought about it kind of after we mounted it here. I thought, you know what, we should have probably mounted it further back, so that then we needed to shorten it to 16 inches, and then we could take that off if we ever wanted to cut anything longer, like an 18-inch cut or something like that. But we can also just remove the whole cylinder if we ever need to. And then we, you know, temporarily for a while there, we didn't have the log stop. We cut all this off and just kind of lived with this, which we modified ourselves, put this on the, it's just attached to the window guard there. And we drilled different holes for different lengths, and then we actually put a piece of, this is just like a marking flag. I think it's actually for like, it was magnetic, and you can hook this on your trailer ball to be able to flag your trailer ball. That original intent is for this thing that we got this off Amazon. And we quickly realized that the fiberglass wasn't gonna last. It would break the fiberglass real quick. But we have this set at 16 inches as well, and it's on a spring, and it worked good. I mean, worked fine. I had to thicken this up, put a little bit of tape around it, but a piece of PEX. We wanted something with a little bit of flex. So a piece of, I think it's 1/2 inch PEX, slides right up over this, fits tight around this tape. And we used that for, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of cords just like that before we ever decided, you know what, let's try to put this log stop back on here. And you know, that's what we did. We welded this log stop back on, and it's been real good ever since. And we do have, you know, a little bit of play right in here. We wanted it to be off the cab, not hard against the cab, not welded to the cab, but we didn't want it to be able to flex a ton. Like if there was no steel right here, it would be able to flex all the way over if you ever get a piece, you know, that's kicking out sideways, which definitely happens. So that gives it that support there. That has worked out well, you know, so far. And so if we, you know, but like I said, if we ever wanted to cut longer wood, we'll just remove this cylinder altogether. And we definitely do cut 24-inch wood every now and then. We don't split it because it's just, there's not enough room. It's like 24-inch stroke, and it just doesn't leave you with any room for it to fall in there straight. So I'll show you that one day. We end up removing the wedge and cutting small diameter stuff that just needs 1 or 2 splits, and we just pump that stuff into a dump trailer in full rounds, and then take that over to a log splitter. So yeah, that's a couple little modifications. This one was handy to have for the longest time, and we've got, you know, a few sets of holes there at the top. I wish I could get my hand out. You know, this one's set at 16, and then, you know, it just gets longer from there. That one's a little bit shorter, and so you know, you can move that to wherever we needed it. And we just put that right here on the window guard. And another thing we have done is extended the window guard. You can probably see right there where I welded this onto it. And then this is a piece of square stock right here instead of round stock. It was just what I had at the shop at the time, and I needed protection on this front corner. We had some logs. Even if you just get a log that just has that's coming in the feed trough, that just has a small, you know, a small limb or something come off of it, or a splinter from where they felt, you know, the tree was dropped and had, you know, something decent diameter would come through here sometimes, and it would hit on that. And so I kind of gave it a little bit more protection, with a little bit of fabrication there to protect that corner of the glass, because we had that glass break on us pretty quickly. But we since, it never did like completely shatter and break out or anything, but we've replaced the glass not too long ago. Actually, for a long time we just had it splintered up windshield here, but now it's been replaced, and that has been nice. We never did even put the decals back on it. I have the decals, but you know, once you get a feel for this thing, it's not something you ever need to look at, you know, once you get a feel for the controls. Yeah, so that's a few little modifications here, but I can probably get you a little better look at what we did to this splitter trough. And we just cut it straight down here with a cutting torch, and then cut it straight across, and then there was a support member underneath there, cut through that, and then we had to cut it off the bottom beam down there, or the main beam right there. And we wanted all that to be as flush as it could be on that beam to not prevent any wood from just falling out. But like I say, the more clearance you have around this wedge, the better product you can put out, and the less strain you're putting on your pusher and on your cylinder, and on, you know, just every aspect of the machine. The engine doesn't have to work as hard, the pump doesn't have to work as hard. So this has been super nice. And I know that the newer Eastonmade processors are pretty dang similar. I mean, they're a lot wider here than they originally were designing them, and they have a very steep pitch on the bottom, allowing the wood to fall out. I know the newer ones have a little bit smaller cab than this one has, allowing for a little bit more space right here. I think it's 4 inches more space, but then they are narrowing it down with a splitter trough a little bit. We opted to just cut this off, and then we did plate the cab, and I'll show you this. I'll walk around the corner there and show you. I think this is a 3/8 plate, so that we weren't denting the side of the cab, and this is held up just fine. I mean, it doesn't get, you know, it may have kind of almost flexed it there a little bit, but nothing crazy. That's definitely a, you know, if any of you guys are going to do this, if y'all have an older machine and want to do this to it, you definitely have to plate the side of the cab. And this is, we just welded it down here, you know, on the vertical edge there, and on the vertical edge in the front. You know, it's held up well. I think I may have hit it maybe on the underside as well. Did go ahead and put some bolts through it. There were some tapped holes in the cab, and put those in it. I mean, honestly, it was mainly just to hold it in place. I installed this when I was here by myself one day, and as you can imagine, that's kind of a heavy plate to hold up and get in position and weld and all that. So I put a couple bolts in it right there. There's already tapped holes in the cab, so I figured I might as well use them and hold it in place for myself while I was welding it. So you can see also we took, you know, had to cut through the framing right there, which was no big deal. And then the other side, where the splitter trough was over here, has just been completely eliminated at the beam. So there was, you know, again, splitter trough right in this area, coming out and coming, you can see where it was on the main beam, you know, and it came all the way to the, you know, just about, I think it came pretty much flush with the end of the beam here. It welded right down there, and then it kind of dropped down into this area. But that's just all completely gone. And yeah, it's worked out well. We did put this little piece of flat bar that you can see right up there at the top edge. That was just to kind of protect any piece from, if it's sliding up there with some pressure on it, it'll at least catch on that before it gets up into the window area. So that was just one more little precaution that we took there to help protect the cab and protect the window and protect the operator. And yeah, I think that's about it right in here that we kind of modified with the splitter trough. That was crucial for us to be able to get that wedge where we needed on each log, to eliminate unnecessary resplitting. Because if you, as you can imagine, if you get wood underneath there with a big split, like I was saying earlier, it's a little bit easier to visualize being right here. It just makes it where your wedge will lift up to whatever height that large log was, because you have a piece of wood jammed in there hard on a piece of steel that's right here. Your next log is a small log. You'll push it through and it will still have that same size split on the bottom, and then you still cannot lower your wedge. So that's something, you know, that was definitely kind of a shock to us when we first started getting processors. We didn't really foresee that being such a problem, I guess. But that's a major thing to think about if you're going to invest in a firewood processor. Make sure that it has freedom underneath that wedge to be able to have wedge control. Otherwise, you're going to have to be always fighting. You know, you'll have to lift the wedge up, clear out from under it, you know, just constantly. And same with freedom on the sides. And like I was saying, as I was coming into the shop, this farthest vertical wedge, whether it be left or right, needs to have, you know, whatever size wood you're cutting, it will sometimes turn completely sideways. You know, there's no stopping it, no avoiding it. It's going to happen if you split enough wood, and you need as much freedom here as you can have. I mean, right here, I don't know what we have freedom wise, you know, as far as free space, but actually I'll go get a tape measure and we'll put a tape on it. This is about perfect. That right there, we were kind of married to where the cab is sitting, and it is what it is. Doesn't quite have enough freedom, let me put it that way. I'm gonna go get a tape measure and we'll see what we're looking at. So from the cab over probably about 19 inches to right there. And on this side, which I would say is more ideal, yeah, just a couple extra inches makes a big difference. About 22 inches. And that makes all the difference in the world. And I mean, this can flex a little bit as well. This is, you know, built out of maybe 11 gauge or something. We didn't go crazy thick on this. We just needed something to contain the wood from falling out the side is really all it's for. And this has worked great. You know, this is the conveyor that was originally attached to our Eastonmade disc cleaner. We had the 10-foot disc cleaner. I think maybe one of the first ones they ever put out as well. You know, we bought it at the same time as when we bought our processor. We bought the disc cleaner, we bought a 24-foot conveyor, and we also got a power pack. And I got all that delivered at one time on a tractor trailer. One of the coolest days of our business, in all honesty. One of the most exciting things that we looked forward to for a long time when this was all in production, that's for sure. We were trying to improve our processes and make things easier, and you know, that's really why we do invest in equipment, is to try to make it a little bit easier on ourselves, on our bodies, and give us a little bit more free time to do something else, work on something else. I mean, in all honesty, it's not like we just take off and don't work when we're not making wood. We're doing other things, but trying to just get by and make a living however we can. And when it comes to firewood, if you can do it efficiently, you know, and still put out a quality product, that's extremely important. The more efficient you can become, the easier it is to make money at a very difficult field to make a living at. So, but we enjoy the heck out of firewood, and I definitely want to keep doing it long term. So, but like I was saying, this was that conveyor. It's a 10-foot attached conveyor that came on our disc cleaner, and we were like, you know what, we need something to transfer the wood from here to another conveyor, because you just can't cram a full-size conveyor up under there. It just wasn't working. You know, we tried it with, you know, we have a few belt conveyors. I've got a Timberwolf, 32-foot Timberwolf belt conveyor, a 32-foot Built Right belt conveyor, and then we had that 24-foot Eastonmade, and they just wouldn't get up under there the way that we needed them to in order to be able to, you know, have this set up the way we need it. And now this is actually just pitched up a lot higher because this is in transport mode. This lays pretty darn flat when it's in production mode, which is another thing that's really nice. You know, the flatter you can keep this conveyor, the less jamming you have down at the bottom. And by jamming, I mean if you have this conveyor tilted up a good ways, you can see the gap that it has there for wood to slide underneath. And pieces of wood, if you have this thing lifted up pretty high, pieces of wood will find their way under there, and then the paddle, you know, it will cram that piece of wood into the back side of that guard right there, and create a jam. So, and then you've got to get out of the machine and clear that jam. You can reverse it and sometimes clear it with reversing it, but not all the time. A lot of times you'd have to get out. But with this thing flat, we almost never have this conveyor give us any problems that we have to ever get out of the cab for. The biggest issue is up here at the top of the conveyor, right in this area. You'll occasionally get some wood that gets up underneath this paddle or these paddles, and then as it comes up over this edge, it'll stop it right here. But usually that can be cleared with just a quick reverse forward, clear that out of the way. So yeah, and I mean, you can even see we've modified this conveyor, put these sides on it. These were originally down closer to that end when it was attached to the disc cleaner, and we cut these off, moved them up this way, welded those you know, the whole kind of hopper on, and this is all just to try to contain the wood. And then we've got these angles right here. We're trying to make it where we don't have to pick up very much off the ground. You'll occasionally still lose some pieces off right here, but we've even got these deflectors right here. Try to get this wood as centered into the conveyor as we can get it before it then falls into our next conveyor. So that's kind of the purpose of all this. And we've actually thought we need to just go ahead and plate this right here all the way up. You know, if it were 6 inches higher right here all the way up, we probably wouldn't lose a single piece. Right now you might lose a couple pieces of live deck, sometimes none on a live deck. You know, just depends. Really, the larger diameter wood is where you sometimes get into some pieces falling on the ground on us. But so you may have seen that repair, but I went ahead and I got that bolt put in there, that longer cotter pin through. So that's one little tweak that we've done, and that's just a wear and tear thing that lasted as long as you could expect anything. You know, I mean, you don't expect stuff to last forever. So that was not a major issue there. I went ahead and tightened this up, but I think it's going to continue to leak. I've seen some oil coming down. I think we've got to have this thing resealed, which is, you know, expected, but I think it's going to hold together at least and not back out now that I got that set screw in there. So let's see, we'll just look and see. We got this thing mounted, and it's nothing special, but I'm welded. I mean, this was just some stuff that we had off of some of our boneyard out there of steel is where this stuff came from to mount this conveyor onto here. And just wanted something that had a good 90 on it, that was good strong. I think this is 1/2 inch thick. And we mounted just a pipe, and then I had just a piece of square tube that's, I think it's got 3/8 wall. I mean, this is some thick stuff. We wanted something plenty strong enough where we could get some real good penetration on some welds, and because I know this takes a lot of abuse. This is held up for quite a while now, and then we still had to have clearance to be able to access, to, you know, remove the wedge, you know, access the boomerang that lifts and lowers the wedge, access, you know, this cylinder if we needed, and all that. So everything is still accessible and can be removed and replaced and serviced just the way it was, even though we added this to it. It definitely lowers ground clearance back here in the back a little bit, especially when it's attached. You can see how
low to the ground it is. Probably 8 inches right there. But I mean, that's enough, you know, enough to be able to get it around the yard. If we were ever to transport this on the highway, we would definitely remove this conveyor and not leave it on here. But yeah, and then another thing we did, you know, you can see on this conveyor itself, we made a few modifications, not only to the hopper that the wood falls into, but right back here, this is pretty crucial. This thing was jamming up on us quite frequently, and this was a piece of C-channel right here on the back end. You can see it. I wish it wasn't so dark under here, but you can see the C-channel, and this is the top of it. We cut this out with our cutting torch, because what would happen is pieces of wood. Before I do remove this plate, I want to show you the purpose of this plate. This plate keeps wood from falling down right here. We would occasionally get wood that would come down in through, you know, this is the wedge. It's probably easier to visualize from up top. And then once it gets there, then it's, you know, gonna jam up under here like I was talking about earlier when that paddle brings that wood through. And this has saved us so many jams. It's unreal. And it's nothing. All it is a piece of steel that we welded a handle to, that we cut to fit right here, and it just lays there. That's all it does. And it just prevents it from jamming. But anyways, before that was there, wood could fall through, and then it would get back into here before the next paddle would come through, and then the next paddle comes through, and then it jams on the underside of that C-channel. And that would happen quite frequently. And so cutting this out, I don't feel like that piece is that necessary for structure. So we felt like we could cut it out, and we've had it cut out for quite some time, and it hadn't caused us any issues as far as structure goes, that's for sure. It saved us a lot of headaches, especially before we put this here. It jammed so much less, and you could clear a jam by reversing it so much easier, because it wouldn't reverse the piece right down into the bottom lip of this C-channel. I hope this makes sense to some of you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. You know, I'll try to explain it a little bit more thoroughly. Reach out, do what you need to do. I want to help anyone out that I can with any issues that you guys have. You know, through my experience, and I'm not saying that I know everything, that's for sure. Just try to tweak things to make it as user-friendly and easy as we can. So, and like I say, this piece of plate, I'm gonna go ahead and take this thing out, show you guys what it is. Like I said, it's just a piece of sheet steel. Piece of sheet steel with a handle on it. Right there, that's all it is. But it keeps pieces of wood, as you can imagine, pieces of wood, if they fall down into there and stay right here, that paddle comes up over, jams it into that, and you've got a jam. So we just tried to prevent any jam we can, and this plate definitely helps. And that's all it does. It just sits in there. That was a great addition, something super simple that didn't take hardly any time, and saved us a lot of headaches. So I don't know if you guys have any conveyors that maybe have a similar open back to it like that you know, you could close it up, you know, but you still want that to be removable just in case you do get a jam and you need to access in there and clear it out. That's why we did it that way. Here's another little thing. I mean, as I walk around the machine, there's only a couple more little tweaks that we've done. This right here, we used to have the biggest problem with these sprockets backing off on us. And this is the sprockets that control the feed trough. The motor's right here. This is the main drive to the main sprocket right up front, and then this is the sprocket for the actual chain. So there's like an individual sprocket, individual roller. This one I'm talking about right here. That roller right there rolls independent of this. I mean, it's all linked together with this chain on this end. But I will say this feed trough on this thing is unbelievable. Feeds almost any log. I hardly ever have to get out to do anything manually as far as getting the log to feed. That was one thing we were kind of hesitant on when we first were pulling the trigger on this machine, or the bells that we were really trying to buy originally. You know, with this feed trough design, we originally had a built right with an hourglass feed trough, and we liked it. We were just not too sure about how well this one would feed. We had never been to any firewood show to see it in person or anything like that, but been extremely happy with it. But anyways, let me get back to where I was at. I get so sidetracked quick, but
This is a little modification that we did. You can just see this little piece of rebar. This is not factory. This is just something I was like, you know what, why don't we put something on here to stop that sprocket from coming off, because these set screws would constantly back out on us, and put as much Loctite on them as we want. It didn't matter. So much vibration on this machine and and movement, they would just constantly back off. And I said, you know, why don't we just put a piece of little stud across this basically to prevent that from backing off, because it's not gonna, it doesn't work its way in, it just works its way out. And this one lines up with that one when they're all the way out, you know. So worked out great. That has not had to, you know, and I said to myself, if this sprocket ever breaks, or if we ever need to get these sprockets off for whatever reason, all we gotta do is cut this piece of little rebar off here. So no big deal. If we have to do that, never have had to do it. So not sure how many hours, how many cords we put through these with it like that, but it's been a lot, let me say that. And that has saved us a lot of aggravation. We used to always have to get over here, and you know, it's not always this accessible. When this is back here, you know, every time you get out to look at the live deck, when your ram is retracted, you can't even see that. So it's not like you're able to look at that easily. If it was always that easy to see, it wouldn't, you'd maybe catch it before it fell off. But so many times this would just fall completely off, and you know, that happened to us quite a few times, and it was a hassle. You know, you'd have to end up loosening these off, and you know, gaining some slack in your motor to get the chain back on, and it was not fun. Quite a good little stopping point for the day most of the time, just in aggravation. But another little thing I'm noticing right here while I'm right here, we just wanted to, we mended this to this. This originally had separation here, and I know this isn't the prettiest way to do it. Could have got one piece of flat stock that was that thick, but this is what I had at the shop, and I think it's 2 pieces of 3/8 or something that I stacked up. And because we had this piece was bending a little bit backwards, and we didn't want that to happen, because then this is behind the face of your push plate, and you can imagine if you're cutting logs and they're dropping into this splitter trough, and if your face plate, your push plate, is the furthest thing out, a lot of times that log will catch on the face of that push plate, kicking it sideways. So we definitely didn't want that happening, and so we ended up, it was bent decently back. And I believe the main reason it gets bent back like that is just a piece that gets wedged in there during the retract on the cylinder. Sometimes that can happen. I believe that happened, and it kind of bent it back. But so we bent it out. You can see where we were beating on it, trying to bend it back out, heated it and bent it out. That's been nice, and I'm not really sure why they don't do this from the factory, because this is separate from the main splitter beam. You know, this is part of the machine along with this. So I mean, in my opinion, this needs to be attached right here, and it may be on the new machines. I haven't paid that close attention and looked to see, but that's something that I think should be attached right there, just to stiffen this up and strengthen it. So that's it right in this area that we've done anything to. That's where the meat and potatoes is of the machine. There's no doubt about it. Everything from here forward is where all the tweaks have been made, other than just one little thing back here that we were having issues with pretty early on with the machine. Now, from Eastonmade, it comes with this whole star, you know, system to kick the logs into the feed trough. Is the greatest thing ever. Works amazing. And as you can imagine, they have to think about everything being serviceable and removable, and so it's got these couplers in the middle of it that have a key in them, and the key is of course rotated around the bottom. There's a set screw. You see that set screw right there? Maybe, yeah, right in here. So there's a key in there that, you know, keeps these shafts in line and keeps them, you know, working together to because they're just controlled by one motor right here, chain driven right there, and then it's just all one bar from there on. But they have these couplers in between so that this is removable, and then you can have, you know, 3 different bars come out of the machine and to make it serviceable a little bit. But we had these couplers were breaking on us. They was just ripping the coupler apart. I don't know if we were just doing too big a wood or just doing something, you know, that we shouldn't have been doing. I don't know what it was, but I ended up just welding them. Eastonmade did send us several of these couplers, and we swapped them a time or two, but it just continued to happen. You can actually see this one here. I can feel it with my hand. You can see that one's ripped open right there, and that's what would happen. It would just break them. And So we since just welded them. We did this pretty early on, welded all the way around the shaft and just made it one solid shaft. And again, just figured if we ever need to, we can just cut the thing apart and work on it the way it's intended to from the factory if we ever had to. So, but that's something real minor, nothing crazy. It was aggravating at the time, no doubt about that. Just something that we just thought, let's just put this here and that'll save us headaches in the future, and it has. We haven't had to mess with it since. Only other thing I think, really, well, I do want to show you guys this. This is kind of the other side of the lift table, you know, the log table here, and this kind of shows how we attached. This is the back side of the splitter trough that I was talking about. You know, that, as you can imagine, the log stop takes a pretty good amount of abuse with every log hitting it. And if you're not careful, you can really hit a log into it real hard. We try to ease logs into it as best we can and not abuse the machine any more than you have to. Firewood's rough enough on it. We don't need to be, you know, any rougher on it than the firewood itself. So we I reinforced this, just put a piece of square tube and welded it to the log table here to reinforce that. And I don't see why we would ever need to remove this. This was removable from the factory. It is no longer removable. It had nuts on the bottom side here that are welded underneath here, and this had bolts going through the bottom. And what happened is my bolts, they ended up breaking off, not due to the log stop situation. It did that long before that. And so I welded this to this long before we even had the log stop on it. And that, you know, helped stiffen this up at times. When these bolts would break, one of them would break, the other one would be in, and then this thing would be a little bit wobbly. And so we stiffened all that up just by hard welding that, and then it also gave us the support that we need for that member to get supported well enough to take the abuse of that log stop, you know, getting constantly hit. Yeah, I think that's about it for what we've kind of tweaked on this machine. Definitely not trying to, you know, bash Eastonmade or anything like that. Eastonmade's awesome. I mean, they build a awesome processor, no doubt about that. This was the very first one, and you expect to have to do minor things, and these aren't necessary things. You could honestly, I'm sure there's people out there that are running this same machine without doing any of this stuff to it, that are still running the same version of this machine that we got, you know, because I don't know how many of these they put out before they started tweaking anything after that. I mean, I know they've done quite a few little minor changes since, but this thing's been great. One more quick little thing we did, I think I've talked about this in a previous video, but this is just something that we welded onto. It's the only attachment plate. The point is right here where it welds onto the plate that I put on the cab. And this is just something that we put here to mount a valve for the disc cleaner onto. Back when we used to have quite a few issues with it jamming, it was nice to have the valve here, so I can just open the window and reach back and quick reverse forward, and that clears just about, you know, 95% of the jams on that disc cleaner. More recently, we've asked for the help of Eastonmade on that, and they sent us a hydraulic motor that is, he originally had a, you know, a high torque, low speed motor. It had a 400 size hydraulic motor on it, and I think we swapped to a 200, or it may have had a 450, or maybe it was a 400 and we got a 250 out. One of those. We swapped to a faster, less torque motor to spin the discs. That's what the motor's doing. And since then, my goodness, that thing, it never jams. I mean, it rarely jams, and if it does, a quick reverse forward right there will take care of it, you know, 95% of the time at least. That's been great. I mean, we almost don't even need that valve there anymore. It could just be back on the power pack, no problem. And a lot of y'all may be thinking, why don't we just hook the disc cleaner to the processor? You know, hook this conveyor into that conveyor into the disc cleaner. And the reason we don't do that is we want them to be independent of one another. That way, if you need to reverse a jam, you're not having to reverse everything at once. Because reversing something, especially a chain-driven conveyor, can cause a jam. You know, or you may not have enough room to reverse it for long enough to clear a jam on something else, you know. So
You know, if the wood was up, like for instance, if the wood was all the way up to here, if you didn't have any wood from there back, you've got plenty of room to reverse it. But if you got wood that just fell into that conveyor right there, and you do you reverse it, you're going to cause wood to, you know, go back up under there, and you know that just is asking for trouble. So that's why we want these conveyors to be independent of the disc cleaner, and the disc cleaner independent of the tumbler, and you know, so on and so forth. So just things that you kind of learn over time, and have you know, it just helps make everything flow a little bit smoother and operate a little bit more efficient. So one other thing I want to just touch on while I'm right here at the wedge, if anyone's thinking about getting a firewood processor, I mean, I guess it depends on the size logs you're able to get in your area, but for us, I mean, a 16-way wedge is an absolute must. I mean, we originally had that built right, and it was a decent sized processor. It had a 75 horsepower, I think it had a 75 horsepower Deutz diesel, I believe, or it may have been Kubota. It's been a while, can't remember, but it was a good size unit, not a small processor. But you know, the largest wedge it had the multi-wedge system, if y'all are familiar, and it had a 8-way, a 6-way, and a 4-way wedge. And you know, I mean, we pretty much ran the 8-way all the time, and we thought, when we got our first processor, we thought, oh, with an 8-way wedge, this is going to make life so easy. But for us, you know, we like to make a small enough product where you can just pick it up with one hand, and it's easily, you know, something that our customers expect and want. And it just put out a lot of resplits. So, and it's something you just don't realize until you experience it, or at least see it in person. And we had never been to any kind of firewood show, never seen a single firewood processor in person until we bought that one. So just wanted to advise you guys and tell you guys my thoughts about that, and maybe save you guys the same struggles we went through, at least at the beginning. But it was a stepping stone to get where we are. We couldn't have gotten to where we are without, you know, going through that. We couldn't have jumped straight into this processor. I mean, at that time I dreamt of a processor like this, and didn't ever really think it would be a reality, to be honest with you. And that was, you know, we've had this one almost 5 years, I guess, and we had that one for probably about 2 years prior to that. And it was a good unit that lasted us, you know, I mean, I'm sure it's serving the next owner very, very well still. So that was a well-built machine. So, and we hope this one lasts us a lot longer. We don't plan on upgrading anytime soon, I don't think. That's why we do things like this, to keep it in good shape and keep it, you know, making wood that we want. So but yeah, I figured this would be an interesting video for you guys to watch. And if you have any questions, or you know, want to see anything in further detail, feel free to comment, ask any questions you want. I'd be happy to go over it, and then it, you know, because I know I probably just kind of maybe glanced over, or you know, didn't go into something as much detail, or may not have been able to be seen very well through the camera lens. So if that's the case, please just feel free to comment, and I'll answer any questions I can. And I think that's going to wrap this one up. I appreciate you guys watching. We'll catch you on the next one.